Finder.
Which means we are recording this meeting so that people who couldn't make it can review it. But I will ask you, if you're not giving a talk, to mute your session, please. And if you don't want to be seen on the video, then you should turn your camera on. Okay, well, we published the agenda for tonight. And the first speaker is myself, and the talk is about the upcoming solar eclipse, which is on June 10th. So I am going to share my screen here. Does everyone see my presentation?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, thank you. Do you still see it?
It's even better now.
Good, I'm glad. So far, so good. All right. Yeah, so we've been talking about the June 10th, 2021 eclipse for about a year now. And for those of you who have seen a couple of presentations on this, I will ask your indulgence. For others who are new, this will be the first time that you've seen it. And so I essentially have an introduction to eclipses, and especially what to expect on Thursday, right? Thursday, June 10th. And how to safely observe the eclipse. And then we'll have some time for some questions afterwards. I'm sure people will have some questions about the eclipse. So just a quick overview of these solar eclipses. What is a solar eclipse? So our moon passes in front of the sun from time to time. And since the moon is a solid object, it blocks out the light and it covers the sun. So very straightforward. So the moon is actually moving in its orbit, and as it moves in its orbit, it essentially describes a shadow on the Earth that slowly moves. And so it's really the moon that's moving, not the sun or the Earth, for an eclipse to happen. A solar eclipse only happens at one phase of the moon, that's new moon, when the moon is in between us and the sun. And this happens every month. We just had a new moon a few days ago. So we get 12 new moons approximately every year, but we don't get 12 solar eclipses. And we'll talk about why that is in a minute. So this is, I kind of like this diagram because it gives a good idea of how the moon shadow goes across the Earth. And it goes across the Earth essentially in a straight line, but later on when we see the paths of eclipses, you'll see they're very curved. And it's really the curvature of the Earth that makes them do that. The moon is going in a constant straight orbit. Describes a straight shadow path on the Earth. So why isn't there an eclipse every new moon? It's because the orbit of the moon is inclined 5 degrees to the orbit of the Earth, which essentially means that for most new moons, the moon is either above or below the sun. But we can't see that. We can't see a new moon because of the glare of the sun, and also because we're looking at the part of the moon that isn't sunlight. But it's only when the moon crosses a line called the ecliptic, or a plane, which is the Earth-Sun plane. It's only when it crosses that, and it crosses at 2 points in its orbit, that we would get an eclipse. So this diagram is, I kind of like it. It's a little complicated, but it really shows you well how the moon has to be lined up with the sun and the Earth in a straight line for there to be an eclipse. And that is when the new moon takes place, when the Earth is at what's called the line of nodes. So the point in time when the moon crosses the ecliptic and lines up with the sun, that's when we get an eclipse. So most of the time, the moon is either below the sun, as seen from the Earth, or it's above the sun. And you'll notice that it happens, you do get an eclipse at the line of nodes 2 times a year, 6 months apart. So if somebody asks, well, how often is there a solar eclipse, or how many times do you get a solar eclipse? Generally, you get 2 a year, 6 months apart. And right now, we are in the eclipse months are December and June. There was an eclipse of the sun visible in South America last December, but that was many people didn't go see that because of COVID. Now, there is a strange coincidence, and that is our moon and the sun appear about the same size in the sky, about 1/2 degree, or about the size, about the diameter of an aspirin held at arm's length. So this is a coincidence, but it means that at times the moon can totally cover the sun, and they just appear very, about the same size in the sky. But the moon is a lot smaller than the sun. The sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer to us, and that is why they appear the same size. But the moon's orbit is not circular, and so at some time during a new moon, the moon will be at its closest point to the Earth, and it will appear big enough to totally cover the sun. This is what's called a total eclipse. At other points, or at other times at new moon, when the moon is at its farthest point, it doesn't appear big enough to cover the sun, and then there's a ring of sunlight left over, or an annulus. And we see what's called an annular eclipse. And sometimes there's what's called an annular total eclipse, when the new moon happens and an eclipse happens just at the point where the moon and the sun appear exactly the same size. That's rather rare. But the main thing is the elliptical orbit of the moon means that the moon's diameter changes from month to month. Here are a couple pictures taken of the sun to show that during the year, the Earth is in an elliptical orbit as well, and during the year, the moon actually appears, or the sun appears larger and smaller, depending on if the Earth is at its closest point or farthest point. The Earth is at its closest point in January. That's what's called the perihelion, and it's at its farthest point in the summertime. But this only changes by a few percent. We really don't notice it in any means. But of course, the changing angular size of the sun will affect a total eclipse if it takes place in January versus July. The changing diameter of the moon, because of its elliptical orbit, is much more dramatic, as you can see in these photos. And when the moon is at its closest point, this is where the whole definition of supermoon came in, something that irks me to know. But the moon does, in fact, if you could put 2 full moons side by side, one when the moon's at its closest point, one when it's at its farthest point, you can see that there's a dramatic difference. And so a solar eclipse at perigee, the moon appears much, much bigger, and it's big enough to cover the entire sun. The moon at apogee, appears smaller, and it won't cover the entire sun. So we get these 3 types of eclipses: a partial eclipse, where you've only got the moon covering part of the sun; an annular eclipse, when the moon is at its farthest point and not big enough to cover up the sun; and a total solar eclipse when the moon is big enough to cover all of the bright part of the sun, leaving some of the outer atmosphere visible. And that's the event that everyone needs to see at least once. This is a picture I stole off the internet before I rebooted it, and that is an annular eclipse taken several years ago. So all of these eclipses are well predicted through mathematical models, and you can see the curviness of these because of this is a flat map, which is why the straight lines on the curved surface, when you flatten it out, it causes these curves. And you can see that the red lines are annular eclipses, and the blue lines are total eclipses. So here are a few eclipses that I want to talk about tonight. Here's the June 10th annular eclipse, and you'll see that the path is very, very wide, and it also starts in Ontario and immediately heads north. And so this is a perfect instance of an annular eclipse where the path is very, very close to the top of the Earth. And we'll see a different diagram of that in a minute. So the eclipse starts at sunrise in northern Ontario, just west of Hudson's Bay, and quickly curves up past through Baffin Island and up towards the North Pole. And here's another diagram just to show how wide this path is. There was some thought about going up and seeing the annular eclipse at sunrise, but actually with some discussions with people in Thunder Bay and Sudbury, we were advised against it for several reasons. But it's just so desolate up there, and there are signs that say no gasoline for 100 kilometers. But also there are a lot of indigenous groups up there, small villages, and they've been blocking roads with the concerns of COVID. So with that in mind, we advise people not to make the trip. So looking from the sun to the Earth, you can see the path of the eclipse, and notice that it's near the upper edge of the globe, and that is why it's a very short line that here's another view of it, moves across the northern part. And even the annular phase actually crosses the North Pole. So here's an animation showing just that. And what's interesting with these things is that that the shadow line looks very, very fluid as it, it's a perfect circle, but as it moves across the Earth, it distorts and becomes very elliptical, and even the shadow of the annular shadow changes shape quite dramatically. Sunrise from Thunder Bay, just west of the path of annularity, will look like this. It'll be a crescent sun. A little farther northeast of Thunder Bay, and the sun will rise just before the annular phase. For us, it is actually, if it's clear, well, obviously if it's clear, but if it's maybe a little hazy, it's going to be quite spectacular. I think many people on the call today remember the sunrise Venus transit in 2004, and I think a lot of people watched it from the lake because you need a nice low horizon. And there was a little hazy that day. It was in June as well. And a lot of people were able to see, with the haze filtering the sun somewhat. Saw a pretty spectacular thing. So hopefully we'll be able to be as fortunate this year. But we do have to be careful. You don't want to look at any part of the bright part of the sun, which is called the photosphere, when it's not covered by the moon. So you have to use proper protection. And just as a good example, you want to make sure that you follow the example of people who know how to use filters to look at the sun. And this is one of my favorite photographs from the August 2017 eclipse. So during an eclipse, the moon, as it moves in its orbit, slowly crosses across the face of the sun. And this period here can take just over an hour or so, sometimes a little longer. But the orange color of the sun is due to the fact that the person is using a filter. We'll talk about filters in a minute. For a total eclipse, when the moon totally covers the bright part of the sun, the photosphere, then you don't need a filter. It's perfectly safe. That won't happen for us. The part of the photosphere will not be covered for us, so we'll all have to use filters during the eclipse. So there are commercially made solar filters that slip over the end of your telescope. And the thing is, you don't want to allow the heat from the sun to enter your telescope. Basically, it's the infrared and the ultraviolet that is damaging to the eye. And specifically, since the eye, the retina doesn't have any nerves in it, you don't know when damage is taking place. So you just have to be careful and use the proper filter. So if using an optical instrument, you need to put a filter over the objective where the light is entering the instrument. You can project an image of the sun. This is with binoculars, you get two images by just projecting the image. So not looking through the binoculars, but projecting the image onto a white surface. And you can do that with a telescope as well, using a white card. And generally, you put another card here to block out the other sunlight to give a good view. This used to be very popular before commercial filters were made and were quite affordable. They used to be glass, all just glass filters, which were quite expensive. But now with the Mylar filters, it's quite affordable. And of course, there are solar filter glasses or viewers that are extremely easy to get. These Mylar glasses, the National RASC office and Sky News are selling, and there are a lot of commercially available glasses. So there was an annular eclipse in Toronto a few years ago. What's that, 27 years ago? And I'm going to show a short video later on in the presentation, later on this evening, with some of the things that happened out in front of the planetarium on that day. But we did get an annular eclipse. We nearly missed the annular path nearly missed Toronto, and you can see it's so close that you can see what are called Bailey's beads, which are essentially little beads of sunlight coming in between the rough lunar surface. So if you look at a map of that eclipse path, you'll see that the northern path of annularity just touched the coast of Toronto, and I guess it got up just far enough up University to the planetarium. So I think we got a little bit more annularity than that, but not much. So that is what to look forward on June 10th. Just a little bit about a couple other solar eclipses that we've been talking about, because there really is this June eclipse is the first of three that we're going to be
Are you letting people into the meeting?
Yes, I'm trying to.
Okay, good.
problem is when I'm giving the talk, I don't see the people wanting to come.
Yeah, I just got a bunch of emails about it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's what the YouTube recording is for.
Yes. Okay, I've got the little window now so I can see them waiting. All right. So the other fact about not seeing this annular eclipse is because a couple years from now, another annular eclipse will be visible. This one passing through the southwest United States. And as we see in this animation, it crosses down through the US and all the way down to South America and off the Earth. So I really like these animations because they really give you an idea of notice the size of the annular shadow as it leaves the Earth and how it speeds up due to the the fact that we have a globe. And then just a few words about the solar eclipse in 2024. We've talked about this already, but for people who are new, I should let them know that we are going to have a total solar eclipse very close to Mississauga on April 8th, 2024. The path goes up through Mexico, the United States, and then goes through 5 provinces. And you'll notice that each of these eclipses, they're either going from southwest to northeast or northwest to southeast because of the angle of the lunar orbit to the Earth's orbit.
Why don't we just do you and I, and we'll tell them that it didn't work for Jared. Okay.
I just have a few people.
You said before.
Okay. So here's the path that crosses nicely over Lakes Ontario and Erie, and then actually cuts through Montreal. Half of Montreal sees a total eclipse, half of it sees a partial eclipse. And going a little closer to home, you'll see that the path goes through Burlington down to St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Buffalo. But just skirts Oakville and misses Mississauga and Toronto. And this is, I pulled this from Google Maps the other day. There are some amazing individuals who throw these things together. I mean, with this Google Maps, you can actually see what intersection the eclipse is. If you stand on one side of an intersection, it'll be total, and the other side it will be partial. And the interesting intersection is right where Trafalgar Road hits the lakeshore, and south of that is total, and north of that will be partial. So this line just cuts south of the Ford plant, and here in Mississauga, we'll have a 99.9 something eclipse, but we won't be total. I think it'll look like a diamond ring for several seconds, but it'll never go total. Which this sort of suggests that eclipse morning, this happens in mid-afternoon. Eclipse morning, there are going to be a lot of people, like thousands of people, clogging up the QEW heading this way. And I don't even want to think about it. I think it'll just be a parking lot. The eclipse then passes out through New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador. So what is so great about these eclipses? Well, if you talk to anyone who's ever seen one, they'll tell you. It's difficult to describe all the things that happen during a total eclipse. I know it's been a long time since I saw my first one, but the one thing I do think of is, I'm remembering at the time, is that I knew that the sun was going to disappear. And still I'm amazed, and oh my gosh, what if I didn't know? It would have scared the living daylights out of me. So the light levels decrease as more and more of the sun is covered, but you really don't know that there's an eclipse going on until about 80 to 85% of the sun is covered. And you'll see here, these are pictures taken with at the same exposure, and you'll see that it gets dark rather slowly, and then suddenly it gets dark, and then the same. So it's not linear; it's exponential in how quickly it gets dark. As the sun becomes a very thin crescent, it's very easy to make pinhole cameras with your fingers or with any object. People use colanders or household cooking devices to make interesting pictures. I've even seen someone make pinholes out of letters, like in cardboard, so that they have a sign, you know, solar eclipse and the date and time, all in crescent suns. As the moon covers the sun to a point where it's just a very thin crescent, that light passing through the atmosphere causes rather strange shadows called shadow bands. And these things dance around on the ground. They're really quite amazing. And they really look like shadows on the bottom of a swimming pool. But they're very eerie, because by this time, it's only about a minute or a minute and a half before totality. And it's getting very dark very quickly. And a lot of things are happening very quickly. Then there's that last little bit of sun disappears. We get what's called the diamond ring. Kind of looks like a diamond ring with the corona. And then the moon covers up the last little bit of bright sun with these Bailey's beads that I talked to you about in that annular shot. And then you begin to see the beautiful corona on the sun. You can begin to see pink prominences peeking up above the sun. And usually Venus and Mercury are visible, and the odd bright star. And unfortunately, it doesn't last very long. It only lasts for a few seconds to on average between 2 and 4 minutes, sometimes longer. Theoretically, it can last up to 7 minutes, but the totality goes very quickly. And I like this picture because it reminds me of what it looks like in my mind's eye. The fact is it's not totally dark, but it's dark enough, and that there's this beautiful sunset color all the way around the horizon, where the light from outside the eclipse is coming in. So here are a few pictures that I've taken over the years. This was in Africa in 1980. Some really nice prominences just after the beginning of totality in the Philippines in 1988. Yeah, so that was just, France in 1999. There were some incredible prominences on that day. Some diamond ring. This was my first digital camera eclipse, so you could take a lot of pictures quickly. And showing the diamond ring and then the Bailey's beads. And then the one that many people here saw last, just 4 years ago in the United States. So something to look forward to. If you really want to see one from your backyard, then see if your calendar on your phone will go up to 2144, because that is when there will be the next total solar eclipse in Mississauga. And with that, I will take some questions.
Randy, where can we get glasses?
They have glasses at the national office, or at the, if you look at the Sky News website, you can order them online.
Okay, thank you.
I think, yeah, I think some, they still have some. Chris says the 2024 eclipse will not be total in Centennial Park. That is true. That is true. Yeah, the good comment about the weather. Whenever you're planning to go to see a total eclipse of the sun, you generally want to. You always want to look at the weather And we have an RASC member, Jay Anderson, who has been has a great website. I think it's called Eclipse File. And he's got all the weather information for eclipses. And you know, we all know that early April, the weather can be a little dicey here in Ontario. And I think the data is that 50% of the time, April 8th is totally overcast. And then the other days, there are varying amounts of clouds. So certainly if you stay here, it will get dark and it will be quite impressive. But you essentially have to take your chances. Now this year, everyone was looking at the weather on April 8th. And for Southern Ontario, it was fantastic. But anyway, that's a concern when you're considering an eclipse of the sun. Any other questions?
Just a comment, Randy. A friend of mine who used to live in Mexico said that part of Mexico where that 2024 eclipse will be is actually not the safest area of Mexico to be in. I don't know Mexico very well, but that was her opinion, is that's a little bit not so safe an area to be in Mexico. So she recommended if you wanted to go south to try Texas, but as the note says there, you know, even Texas has a lot of cloud that time of year.
Yeah, I actually drove north of Acapulco there, or north of Puerto Vallarta. I actually drove around that area in 1989 looking for an eclipse site for 91, and it looked pretty good. So maybe is the concern around the border with the states, or is it the southern part that's the concern?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, just safety concerns, I guess, but who knows?
Well, the interesting thing is the weather prediction has come a long way. And if you get yourself down somewhere along the eclipse path and you see what the weather looks like 24 hours away, then you just start driving. So yeah, it can be quite exciting. I mean, whenever you're on an eclipse trip, you're always looking at the weather. All right, I'd like to move on. So I will share my screen once again. You should see the presentation again. Is that what you see?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So next presentation is sort of a follow-on to our presentation last month that Emily Carney gave about Skylab, the first American space station. The space station was launched on this date, May 14th, in 1973. And we have a presentation tonight related to that. But I pulled a little bit of video out of the archives just to mark the occasion. So these are the two rockets that were used. The one on the right is a Saturn V. The first two stages were used to put the space station, which was essentially a converted third stage, into orbit. And then the astronauts were scheduled to be launched the next day to go to the space station, but there were some problems on the way up, and the space station was damaged, and the crew was delayed to May 25th. Well, you'll notice the ingenious method. This is a smaller Saturn rocket. This is called a Saturn 1B, and they used this for Apollo 7 before they started using the Saturn V's. And they wanted to use the big Saturn V tower, so they built one of these little things. They called them the milk stools, and that was just so to allow the Saturn 1B to use the Saturn V tower. That's why it looks kind of strange.
Guidance release. T-minus 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. We have ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And we have a liftoff. The Skylab tower. Houston is now controlling.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that.
Mark 18 seconds. Pitch and roll program started. Saturn now maneuvering to its proper flight path attitude. Mark 25 seconds. Mark 30 seconds.
Approaching the 30-second mark in the countdown. At 30 seconds, water will begin spraying on the deck of the mobile launcher. T-minus 30 seconds, and the countdown continuing to go smoothly. The Skylab itself orbiting some 780 nautical miles northeast of KSC at this time. T-minus 17 seconds and counting. T-minus 15. At T-minus 3.1 seconds, we'll expect the engine sequence to start on the vehicle. T-minus 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Engine sequence start. 2, 1, 0. We have launch commit and we have liftoff. The clock is running and Skylab has cleared the tower. Houston is now controlling. The thrust is going all in. Boy, is that a smooth ride. 25 seconds, pitch and roll program started. Skylab now maneuvering to its proper flight path attitude.
All right, so our next speaker is Simon Claughton, and he's going to talk about Skylab and a little bit of a history of stamps and first day covers. So I will get out of here if I can. And stop my share. And Simon, it's all yours.
Simon, audio? Is Simon muted?
Do you hear me?
A little low.
Microphone fell off. Okay, how's that?
There you go. That's much better.
Excellent. Okay, Saturn Apollo Skylab, Part 1, as told by Postal History. Okay, there was, as Randy just showed with the launches, there was two launch vehicles, the Saturn 1B for the crewed flights and the Saturn V for the orbital laboratory flight. Now, in both these cases, the F1 engines were about 10% more powerful by this time, and on the stage 2, the J2 engines were also about 10% more powerful. So actually, this last Saturn V launch was one of the most powerful launches that has occurred. The Saturn 1Bs that launched the crews to space, they were also 10% improved in performance, and that allowed the second stage to actually do all the orbital maneuvering to take the Apollo craft to the orbital laboratory. Now, I give a bit of history here. The first Saturn 1B was launched in February of 1966, and that was number 1, and then numbers 6, 7, and 8 launched the 3 Skylab crews that went to visit the space station. The first Saturn V was in November of 67, and the launch of Skylab with number 13 was actually the last flight of Saturn V from Launch Pad 39A. And immediately after this launch, Pad 39A began to be disassembled because it was going to be converted for the space shuttle launches. Now, the missions, there were informally about 6 missions that were planned. The first one was the launch of the space station, and then you had 3 manned missions. There was a possible 4th mission, manned mission, but it got scrubbed. And the last one was the rescue mission that never was used. And this has caused a lot of confusion. The Houston and Cape Canaveral obviously identified everything as Skylab launches by the use of rocket equipment. So there was Skylab 1, 2, 3, and 4. But Skylab orbital mission planning, which was the Skylab manned missions, used 1, 2, 3, and having Skylab 2 and Skylab 1 be the same mission caused endless confusion, and as we'll see that as we go through the covers. So there's an artist's impression of Skylab as it should have been with the 2 solar wings. And there's the launch of the space station with the Saturn V. It launched on May 14th in 1973. And at 1 minute and 3 seconds into the flight, maximum dynamic pressure on the spacecraft as it went through the atmosphere at Mach speed. Unfortunately, the heat shield tore away from the laboratory, and in so doing, it damaged the solar panels. At 9 minutes and 53 seconds, the second stage, the Saturn II, did a maneuver to separate itself from the space station, so it could maneuver away from the Skylab. In so doing, the retro rockets fired, and the one solar panel that had partially deployed due to the heat shield falling off at 1 minute 3 was hit hard with the plume from the retro rockets, that it actually was fully extended and then torn off the space station. So solar wing number 2 completely disappeared at this time frame, 9 minutes and 53 seconds. Number 1 stayed latched, but as it was commanded at about the 43-minute mark to open, it unlatched, but it did not extend. It went 9% in its opening position, and it was held in place with debris from the heat shield when it was torn away. So these are 2 problems that occurred during the launch of the space station.
Simon, I have a question if you don't mind. Do you mind?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, go back 1 slide if you don't mind. That says heat shield damaged. Yeah,
Yes.
that one, yeah. So, but it's postmarked when it was on the launch day. So does that sort of prove that it was sort of blank when they did it, and then they printed it afterwards? Or
You're learning the secrets of the cover makers. Yes.
okay.
They have their agents go to the Cape Canaveral post office, and it's a white cover with a stamp on it.
Okay.
They get a cancel, and then they mail back. In this case, this particular cover maker usually did between 200 and 300 covers. So this is a machine cancel, so they would be done about 50 covers a minute. So in 3 minutes, he has all his covers. So his agent would then bundle them up and mail them back to him he was in New Jersey. And then he would go to his printer and print on all the artwork you see.
Okay.
And of course, he would add something if there was something that was different. So he would make the correct time, the exact time of launch, the fact that the heat shield was damaged, and that's all they knew on the first day, and that's why you get this on a this is called an event cover. It's not a
Okay.
first day. The stamp is not a first day of issue, so it's an event postmark commemorating an event, which in this case is the launch of the Skylab space station.
Cool. Thank you.
So again, the covers now, for those that remember earlier presentations, the covers in this time frame have a lot of interesting content. So a lot of the info that they knew at the time that the launch occurred is in cards that are inside the envelopes. So they're fascinating little stories here, right? And they obviously, in the week that everything was being printed so he could mail it out to his customers, he knew that the event happened at 63 seconds, or a minute 3, as I mentioned. Now, as Randy mentioned, the launch of the crew that was going to occur on the next day was delayed until May 25th. And this is when the first man crewed, or Skylab 2 from Cape Kennedy's point of view, launched. And this is showing the command module approaching Skylab. And this is the info card that's inside. So it shows the Saturn V launching the space station, and a Saturn 1B taking the first crew up and then coming back, a Saturn 1B taking the second crew up and coming back, and then a Saturn 1B taking the third crew up and coming back. And again, because of the incident that happened that caused the damage to the heat shield, and as well as damage to the solar panels, the first thing they did is try to figure out how to create a shield, which they actually came up with about 3 different solutions. The one they chose to launch first was the paracel solution. And at the same time, they, with ground-based imaging, they were able to sort of have an idea that the solar panel that did not deploy could have debris around it from the heat shield. So they went to a company that supplies hydro pole workers with tools to cut wires from hydro poles. So they could have cutters at the end of long poles. So they actually just bought off-the-shelf hydro worker tools to cut metal, and had that modified slightly to go up with the first Apollo craft that launched 11 days later. So here's the docking on May 25th. And you notice here they sort of scrabble in a bit where the heat shield is, and they show the panels not deployed. So this artwork was done in pretty record time, because as you see in this artwork on the insert, it shows the panels fully deployed and a heat shield in place. Now, because the solar panels, let's go back. The solar panels on the telescope, which was an instrument attached to the laboratory, did fully extend, and they provide about 50% of the power for the mission. The 2 panels on the laboratory would provide the other 50%. Each pair of panels produces about 5,000 watts total. So they were essentially down to only 2,500 watts. And that it could run things, but it means they would have to sequence experiments. They couldn't run some experiments in parallel because of energy requirements. So the first mission was to try to get power back up. Now, on this first docking, they had another problem. They discovered that the Apollo wouldn't dock properly with the space station, and Pete Conrad was famous in saying that if they can't dock, they're going to come right back. Well, I guess he had a change of heart when he was there, because he tried 9 times, and he finally shorted out an electrical cable that was giving some false information, I guess, and did a hard dock that finally worked at 11:50 that evening, and they finally got a hard dock and were able to stay at the space station. So first thing is on the 26th, the next day, they go into the space station. It's at 130 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's quite warm. A desert environment, as was mentioned by the crew. And they go to the experimental hatch, where they poke their parasol and then extend it on the spring mechanism that it was made from. And it expands fairly quickly. There's still wrinkles, but over time, as they pull it in closer to the station, and as the sun heats it up, the wrinkles resolve themselves. And the temperature drops down to the 80s, about 5 degrees hotter than it was designed for. And there's how the parasol is put in place. Again, the info cards are cool little things. It tells you quite a bit of story about what goes on. Right. The next thing was to try to fix the solar panels. This occurred on June 7th. And they do an EVA, and they use their tools from the hydro crews and some nylon ropes, and they fasten it all on, and then they cut away and yank. And after about I think 3 hours, the panel opens up, and they add another 2,000 watts of electricity. The panel opens fully and operates perfectly. So they're back in business. Now, of course, this was a mission that was designed to be the shortest of the 3. It ends up being 28 days. And one of the last things they do shortly before they return is they retrieve film canisters that had been installed on the solar scope that was part of the laboratory, and that's the one that had the 4 panels of solar. And he retrieves over 30,000 photographs that they had taken of the sun. And there happened to be a chrono discharge at this time, and they got some phenomenal pictures that the scientists were absolutely joyous about. Now you can see in the card here, it's Skylab 1, SL2, again continuing the confusion of what the numbering of the missions were. They splashed down on the 22nd, just 800 miles off San Diego. And all 3 missions actually splashed down in the same spot. And there's a map, United States and Hawaii, and there's the location of the splashdown site. Right on target. And again, the crew were put through very extensive medical tests at this time, because this was on this date, this was the longest mission where people had stayed in space for 28 days. It was a record at the time. There's the cover from the USS Ticonderoga, which was the recovery force. And they call it Skylab 2, because it was the second launch mission. But of course, the crew was manned launch 1. And thank you very much. Okay, any questions?
Thanks, Simon.
Okay.
Questions for Simon?
Great presentation, Simon. Was there ever any plans to do more than 3 missions and kind of use it longer than they did? It seems like
Yeah,
those were all pretty compressed.
there was a manned mission 4 or SL5, which was to be a short mission to use the remaining resources of the space station. Again, this is a space station that was not to be resupplied. So when it launched, the 100-ton space station, when it launched, it had everything it needed: water, food, fuel for maneuvering, all the atmosphere, and everything like that. So all the Apollo craft did is bring astronauts and some perishable consumables like film, right? Because they exposed it and they had to bring it back. So there was plans for a 4th manned mission. And then, of course, they always had a backup mission, the rescue mission, where the Apollo craft could bring back 5 astronauts. So you had, the 3 seats, and then underneath you had 2 more seats. And that was never flown because they never had an issue where they needed to launch quickly. But and I don't know if the plans were to keep the space station active and to probably revisit it at some point in the future. But at this time, the space shuttle was starting to eat budgets rather quickly because of issues that were occurring in the development of the space shuttle. So I think it curtailed any further missions after the first 3. And it later caused problems when it became end-of-life issues, and things just didn't work out properly. But that's all for part 2.
Sounds good. Simon, Chris Malicki had a question. The cancel over the stamp for the June 1973 and the one before that shows a nice space lab image. Is that an official NASA cancel or a post office cancel?
That would probably be the Cape Canaveral cancel. Let me.
Is there a post office at Cape Canaveral?
Yes.
Oh, so that's from that post office?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a post office at Patrick Air Force Base, and there's a post office at Cape Canaveral, and there's a post office at the Kennedy Space Center. So launch covers can all get canceled at 3 locations.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just bring it up there. That's probably this one. Yep. So that's the Skylab cancel at the Kennedy Space Center. Right, this here. So
Yeah.
that's the Skylab and NASA and the Skylab symbol. Right.
Yeah, but a lot of the others didn't have that cancel. They just had a plain type of cancel.
Anything in Houston probably wouldn't have it. Right. There's Kennedy Space Center again.
Yeah, like that one.
Yep.
Yeah, but it says Cape Canaveral, but
Yep.
the cancel itself is just some straight lines. It's not the space lab picture.
You got to remember that all the cachet makers are handing in their thousands of covers. So Cape Canaveral Post Office, which is just a little building, they have one canceller that is the commemorative cancel, but then they have a one in the back room that just does high speed, plain cancels, and that's what this is.
Yeah.
But isn't that's Cape Canaveral, not Cape Kennedy?
Yeah, Cape Canaveral. Yeah, this is Kennedy. Well, maybe only the Kennedy Space Center had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. So is it more valuable if it has this nice space lab cancel rather than the plain one? Like,
people would probably prefer to get the Kennedy Space Center cancel because of that, rather than the Cape Canaveral cancel, which is pretty plain.
okay.
The name Cape Kennedy reverted back to Cape Canaveral the month before Skylab was launched.
Ah, okay.
And the interesting thing that the times I was down for shuttle launches, in the press room, you could buy first day covers and put your address on it and then throw it in a little basket, and they would feed it through the meter whenever the thing launched. So even if it's scrubbed and you had to leave, your envelope would show up on the right day.
Cool.
Thanks, Simon. That's great.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, a little bit of administration for the center. And we were looking at the Groups I/O recently, and wanted to revive the astrophotography Groups I/O, and then considered an observing and beginner Groups I/O. And so Alan and Kirby and I have been talking about this, and Kirby has put together a presentation just to give everyone an idea of where we're going with this. So we're interested in your comments and feedback, you know, either tonight or through, you know, email to the main Groups I/O. But as you'll see through Kirby's presentation, to make these email groups work properly and efficiently, we need some people to moderate them, but also essentially to, I guess, keep them busy. Now, a perfect example of an observing topic would be the Comet Atlas and Palomar discussion over the last few days. That would be ideal for an observing Groups I/O. But there are other times when there aren't as many things going on. So we do need people to, you know, to instigate some discussion. And I think that's what might have happened with the astrophotography. So I'll pass this over to Kirby, and he has volunteered to make the presentation, and then we can open up the floor for discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks, Randy. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. All right, so thanks for that introduction. So let me just get rolling here. So we're just going to talk about 3 different groups. We've had an astrophotography I/O group for a while, and so maybe we can just put a little more energy behind that one again and get some other members involved there. And we talked about 2 new ones that we would like to start up, a beginners group and an observing group. And the observing group would be, you know, tied in with some of the RASC certificates that you can take. So I'll talk about those a little bit as well, and plug some of those too. So we start with the beginner group. So the purpose here would be to encourage and enable new members just starting out in astronomy to contact other members and learn more from those other members. And so you can see the vision there: create an I/O space where beginners can ask basic questions and get help from those who are more experienced. And our view is that, you know, the only safe, just a safe place to ask questions. The only stupid question is the one that's not asked. And I've got a good example of that, of a question that was not stupid at all. So in the 2017 eclipse, I was out in Oregon watching it from there, and it was about 10 minutes before the eclipse. This gentleman comes up to me, and I think he figured I might know the answer to his question because I had all this gear. And he says, "Can I ask a really stupid question?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "Where is the moon right now?" And I said, "Hey, buddy, that is not a stupid question at all for somebody new to astronomy. You know the moon's supposed to be involved in the eclipse, but where is it? Is it just going to swoop in from somewhere else and block the sun?" So I explained it to him. But, you know, that's a good example that there is no stupid question in astronomy. So hopefully, you know, most of the members in this group would likely be beginners, but hopefully we can get a few of you who are old hands, so to speak, to kind of monitor the chat. I will for sure, but to kind of monitor the chat and provide guidance when people have questions. And we will also just encourage new members to sign up for the other subgroups. They may outgrow this one fairly quickly, and they can move on to the observers group or the astrophotographers group. And we may eventually put together a committee to kind of run this and kind of monitor it, but we'll take it one step at a time. So the observing group, similar kind of thought, really just to encourage our members to get out and observe visually and kind of grow in their astronomical experience. Our vision is that we would use that IO observing group to remind members about upcoming events such as a conjunction or an eclipse or a reappearance of a planet at the beginning of a new season, or, you know, hey, there's a close conjunction between the moon and Venus tomorrow morning. You should be able to see it before sunrise. Weather looks good. Just a heads up if you want to try to set your alarm. So, you know, give people those kinds of notices. We have other places to see that in journals and so on, but sometimes we get busy and we forget, right? So that would be one way to remind people. Maybe challenge members to who can be the first to experience something. A new comet on the scene, for example, was a good example given a few minutes ago. You know, who can be the first one to spot an approaching comet that the professionals have spotted. So we'll create an IO group on this, and we'll talk about how to join that in a minute, and that will just kind of facilitate that communication. So I'll keep an eye on this group as one of our committee members. And then Joe Vanderdoel has played the role of kind of reviewing and approving certificate applications. And I contacted him this week, and Joe gracefully agreed to continue playing that role for a while. And if it gets to be too busy, then I can help, or we can get some other people to help Joe with that workload. So I just wanted to say, I just threw in a few slides here just to kind of remind people, especially new members to the group, about all the observing certificates that you can go after in the RASC. They're really, really easy to find. From the RASC website, you can just click on observing, and then the menu will drop down and you can click on observing programs. And that'll take you right here to a general description and a list of about 8 that are available at the moment. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a sense on 3 of them. I've done 3 of them, and so I'll just share my experience a little bit. I found them really, really fulfilling and kind of fun to work on. So a really good one to start out with is the Explore the Universe one. That's probably the most basic and probably a great place for a beginner to start. To complete it, you need to find 55 different objects, and they give you 110 to choose from, and you don't need to do all 110. You just need to select 55 from that group and check the boxes on those. It covers constellations, bright stars, stars, moons, solar system, deep sky objects, double stars, etc. There's links there about guidebooks you can download and logbooks that you can download. And then when you're all done with these certificates, they give you a nice pin now, and they give you a certificate, and they put your name up in lights on the website. I didn't realize they were doing this until I put together this presentation this week, and I didn't want to invade anybody else's privacy. But there's an example of mine. I did this certificate, and so the website shows that I completed it in 2007 when I was in Europe, actually. And there's a certificate that you would get as well, in addition to the pin, for completing that Explore the Universe certificate. It may look different now, it's been some years, but you get the gist. Here's another one that I did, the Messier Catalog. That one's fun. As you can guess, the goal here is to view all 110 objects on the Messier list. And so that will take you through open clusters, globular clusters, planetary nebula, emission nebula, and galaxies. And these are not all of the brightest objects, deep space objects, but many of the best deep space objects were visible to Messier, and so they made this list. And so it's a great list to work through, and you'll complete a certificate in the process. Again, there's observing forms and fillable PDFs to kind of log your observations. So I did this one back in 2013, and I just kind of reached back into my logbooks and completed the documentation. I had seen most of the Messiers in the past, and so I was able to do this one fairly quickly, and then just kind of grab the last 5 or 6 Messiers that I was still missing and complete this one. So that's a good one to do. There's the certificate, just to give you a feel for the certificate that you get at the end. And then the third one that I've done is the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program, and that's shown here on the list. This one is by far the most comprehensive of the lunar programs. There are a couple other ones, Explore the Moon. I think there's an Explore the Moon through binoculars now too. And those are good places to start for sure. This one is very comprehensive. This one is a lot of work. There's 135 objectives. And then within each objective is usually several craters and things to look for in that region of the moon. There's another 47 challenge objects that are not required to complete the certificate, but if you can find them, great, including 10 libration challenges. And for those of you that don't know what that is, libration is that just kind of very, very gentle rocking of the moon in its orbit over time. And if it's rocked just the right way, you can see a little bit further on one side of the moon than normal. And so you know, those are in there too, and I was able to get quite a few of those. There's logbooks, there's references about which lunar atlases would be the most helpful in completing this, PDF forms, again, the usual PIN certificate and website recognition. I completed this one in 2019, but I probably worked at it on and off for a while, and here's why. So here's an example from the logbook of one of the objectives, one of the 135 objectives, telling you to look in this region of the moon around these 3 big craters. And then there's another part of the documentation that tells you what you have to see in terms of required observations. And so you can see I've listed them there. But the reason it took me a long time to complete this is in the bottom right corner, there's a circle for you to draw, you know, what you're seeing and try to capture it a little bit with a pencil while you're in that part of the moon. And I actually took the step of taking a photograph of each of the objectives. And so I have 135 of these little circular photos, and then I labeled the objects I was supposed to be seeing in the required. In this case, there were no challenge observations to look at. A little bit of information about the camera equipment I took was pretty basic stuff. But this, I want to be clear on this. This is not required. In fact, when I turned it in for review, the proctor told me that he had never seen it done photographically before. So that is not required. And you don't even have to really draw really accurately. The important thing is to capture in words that you've seen the objects. But here's another example. I really just did it because I can't draw to save my life. But this is one, the Claughton region, one of my favorite craters on the moon. And I love it because it's got this semicircular ring of craters that get smaller as you go around the ring almost perfectly. So it's a pretty cool crater. But anyway, that's why it took me so long to complete this, probably over several years for me to get all the requirements done. But that one, if you're really into the moon, that's a good one. So the astrophotography group has been out there for a while and popular with a lot of our members. So encourage and support members who want to capture astronomical events and objects photographically. Again, we're going to, we've got an IO space already, and where those that are new to astrophotography can ask questions about equipment and techniques, provide a medium for sharing astrophotos and the equipment and techniques that were used to produce them, encourage members to work on astroimaging certificates and report on progress and get some help when they're needed. And so, as I said, we've got that group already established, and we'd like to just try to get some more members in it and maybe build a committee around it to drive it. And so in terms of joining a group, really pretty easy to do. And so Alan put this slide together that just says, hey, just subscribe. You just send an email to the group name, and at the end of the name of the group, you just put plus subscribe. So if you want to join the beginners group, you send it to beginners plus subscribe at rasc.groups.io. And same for observing plus subscribe or astrophotography plus subscribe. And you send that email, and then you'll get an email back asking you to confirm your request. And so you simply reply to that confirmation email. And then sending a message to the group. Once you've joined, you would stop using the plus subscribe, but you can send an email out to beginners at RASC, and everybody in that IO group will get it. And those that are not interested in that kind of email activity for that particular topic, they won't be members, and they won't get caught up with that email traffic. So it's a nice way to kind of target emails in these 3 areas to the people that are interested in these groups, but not send it to everybody in the club who might not want to have that much email activity. So I think that was my last slide. So let me just open it up now and see if there are any questions from the group for myself or Randy or Alan.
I just wanted to say that we'll send out a general email to the entire group about how to subscribe to those new groups, so you don't have to jot them down very quickly and make yours.
Yeah, great, good.
Yeah, the moderators that we're looking for, would be people who are comfortable in answering questions about various topics, but also just will monitor the traffic and, as Kirby said, generate some information. By the way, I just got a text that said that the Chinese Martian lander rover just successfully did it. So there's another rover on Mars. We're just sort of generating. I think what we'll do is we'll probably generate some information for the policy manual with this. But I think it's straightforward. Certainly for the beginners, we have the beginners night that we run from time to time. And certainly promote. I think there's one next month, so we'll promote that and promote the beginners group. But I think that'll be very valuable. And then for the observing group, a perfect example of a question is what Mateo's looking for, is that just a little bit of help to find some deep sky objects. And normally in non-COVID times, we would have monthly members observing sessions either at Riverwood or elsewhere. And this would be a perfect time for members to help others identify objects which are on your certificate, and even help you kick the tires with a new telescope or an old telescope. And certainly easier in non-COVID times, which is kind of why we wanted to get these lists up and going, just so that we don't lose contact. And Chris Malicki asked, Kirby, do you know if it's mandatory to have a sketch of each object for the finest NGC certificate?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and check. I don't think it is, but it certainly isn't mandatory to have a good sketch. But I don't think you have to draw everyone. It's just there if you'd like to.
Yeah, this is really the honor system. I mean, you can go ahead and fill out the forms that you've identified. You've seen all these objects and mail them into the national office. If say you're unattached or you don't have a center which has someone to vet the information for you. And it's the honor system. So obviously it's up to you. But if you're spending the time, then you're going to want to see it. And really it's just the date and time and description of the object is perfectly fine. And the people who are looking at them, they've seen the objects too. So.
Do they check the weather of the date when you said you did it?
I don't think so. If they do, they've got too much time on their hands.
It took me 30 years to get my Messier certificate, so that would be a lot of checking. Any other questions before we move on? And I think the discussion will continue in the main groups IO, and as Alan said, we'll send out some information and hopefully get people subscribing to these groups soon. And then we'll again, we're looking for some volunteers for people to moderate and just essentially answer questions. But generally, if you're with the astrophotography group, then you're probably going to have questions, but you're also going to answer questions as well. So
we'll note that the groups have been set up. So if you did jot down those addresses from Kirby's slide, then you can actually go ahead and subscribe now.
Yeah, good point.
I have a question on the sighting of Mercury.
Yeah.
It is visible now near the moon, someone was saying.
The moon passed it, I think, a day or two ago.
Okay.
But it is visible above Venus, which is still rather low.
All right.
But essentially just above where the sun sets once it gets dark. So really, right about now.
Right.
But it's a challenge because you need a nice low horizon.
Yeah.
Clear sky to see it.
So it's like northwest?
Just where the sun sets. So yeah, in the west-northwest right now.
Bill, it's in the Observer's Handbook, page 107. See, this is filled with information. Like, it's a great resource that we all have. So
Okay.
on page 107, it says Thursday the 13th at 18 hours Universal Time, Mercury 2 degrees north of Moon.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess that was yesterday.
It should linger, like it can't just disappear in one day.
No, it did generally in the evening in the springtime when it's at its farthest angular distance from the sun. It's the best time to see it in the evening, but it's only a week to 10 days tops before it just gets lower and lower and lower, and is tough to pick out of the murk of the sunset.
Well, it'll be about 15 degrees away from the moon, I think, because the moon moves 12 degrees per day. So if it was 2 degrees away yesterday, so add, approximately 15 degrees away.
All right.
So you can look to the lower right, and it's a clear night, so.
Okay, so the discussion has started. That's great. So give us your feedback, and the discussion will continue. To finish off tonight, I thought I would do something a little different. As I mentioned earlier, on May 10th, 1994, which of course we all know is Wendy's birthday, at least that's what she tells me, we had that annular eclipse going through Toronto. And in the agenda, I put a link in to the video that we were working on. We did a live show. It was the last, or one of the, I guess it was the last Astronomy Toronto we did. So we were out in front of McLaughlin Planetarium, and we had some guests. We had Dr. Don McCrae, who was the director of the David Dunlap Observatory in the 60s and 70s. And if you've ever seen the National Film Board movie Universe, he's in that. And he told us that he remembers the last time a total eclipse of the sun went through Toronto, and that was in 1925. We also had another a guest, Jeremy Podeswa, who was a director who had made a film called Eclipse a year or two before, and actually some RASC people were in that film. Interesting thing about Jeremy is he went on to direct some pretty interesting things, like he did several Game of Thrones episodes. But we had Ian McGregor was on the show as well, and it was live. But beside us, and I really don't know how I got this video. I must have heard that Much Music was going to have live coverage of the eclipse. But some of the people from Much Music at City TV were beside us. And Kevin Frankish, you may remember Kevin Frankish, was talking to the Much Music DJ at the time, who was Ziggy Lawrence. And hands up anyone who remembers Ziggy Lawrence from the 90s. Yeah, that's a little scary. So the reason I'm showing this is because if I told you what happened in the video, you wouldn't believe me. So I'm going to just cue up Much Music on May 10th, 1994, their coverage of let's see if I can do this right, the annular eclipse in Toronto.
Well, there's much ado about the eclipse, and it figures that I'm working through the eclipse today. Do you know what it is? It's a strategic point where the moon blocks the sun. Listen, you don't want to watch it from outside. Don't peek up because you can blind yourself. The only way to look at the eclipse is through an eclipse projector. You could make it yourself, actually. And the way you do that is you put a small hole with a pin in a piece of cardboard and stand with your back to the sun, and the image could be projected on another piece of cardboard. The next time we're supposed to see this type of eclipse, which is called an annular eclipse or a ring of fire, is in the year 2021. But we're going to broadcast it from, I guess, a CN tower. We're going to project it for you. So there's no need for you to go outside. Don't try it. Please don't. You don't even want your enemies to go and try and look at this, okay? So anyways, this is much more music, and we're going to get softer through this annular eclipse with a woman that has totally eclipsed the music industry. Her whole career has done an eclipse. Bonnie Raitt. As we await the eclipse, and if you want to view it properly, though, remember, with your little cardboard with the pin in it and your back to the sun, you could do that if, well, I guess 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're waiting for it, 1 p.m. So we're going to report to you. We've got the Weather Network, and from time to time, I will give you scientific data. I'll be Miss Lawrence, your science teacher for the day. But we're going to continue with some more, much more music, which is softer music. We've got the king of ballads. He's got to be the king of ballads, Dan Hill. And the song is called In Your Eyes. Also, I don't know, maybe you've heard of this band. I haven't. I've asked a million people about it, and they don't seem to know. Dead Can Dance. Does that ring a bell to you? It must be softer music. This is called The Carnival Is Over. And I wonder if on an eclipse day, it's sort of like a full moon, people get wacky or something. We'll see.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
We're back into the rock and roll, and also anxiously awaiting this eclipse, which won't come around till the year 2021. We're going to go off to the CN Tower to our eclipse specialist, Kevin Frankish, in just a little while. And right now we have the buzz clip, which is the video that everybody is talking about. It's us three, and this is called Tuka Utes or Tuka Utes Rhythm. And that's a buzz clip for today, and I'll join you in a little while to tell you who we have coming in this afternoon, which should be interesting. Well, there's the eclipse happening, and we're going to keep you posted basically on what's happening with it and so on. We're going to go live from the CN Tower in a little while with Kevin Frankish, who is our eclipse specialist. Right now we have Madonna. This is an older Madonna from a couple of years back from her Erotica album. And as you well know, she's kind of stooping to media stunts lately, what with the David Letterman show. And she truly is the woman we want to hate, isn't she? But who knows? That always changes with her. We all have a love-hate relationship with her. This is Madonna deeper and deeper as she gets herself deeper and deeper into trouble. In just a little while, we're going to be speaking with our eclipse specialist, Kevin Frankish. He's at the McLaughlin Planetarium right here in Toronto. The eclipse is taking place. In fact, if you live in Windsor, they're seeing the full effects now if they're watching with their eclipse projecting glasses. You don't want to stare up at it, God forbid. Right now we have a video. It's Colin James, and I'll be with you shortly. Oh, that's okay. We're going to go to Kevin Frankish now. Sorry about that. Kevin Frankish, our eclipse specialist. How are you?
I'm the eclipse specialist?
You look so funny with those glasses. You know what? You look like you're in a John.
Hold on for a second. I have some friends here who have taken their glasses off because they were going to look funny with me. You can put your glasses back on. This is Beth and Margaret and Francis.
Hi.
Put your glasses on. I'm not going to look goofy by myself. So we're actually starting to see the full effect here in Toronto. It won't actually be until 1:23 Toronto time, which is in about 10 minutes, Ziggy.
Okay, so what can we expect to see then, Kevin? Tell us a little bit.
What we're going to see is the moon is going to go in front of the sun. However, it's not going to complete it. It's not a total eclipse. We'll still see a ring of light around the moon, and it's pretty important that you still don't look up unless you have special Mylar glasses like this that we got from the Science Center, welder's glasses number 14, or the special telescopes with the special filters. But we'll show it to you. Can we show a picture of what we're seeing right now over our heads?
That'd be great. Let's do that.
All right.
Catch this.
So what we're seeing, and actually the temperature has started to drop here downtown. It was around 15 degrees. I would think it's around 9 or 10 degrees right now. So it has dropped considerably right here.
Wow.
There's quite a crowd that's gathered here at the planetarium to watch as well.
Now listen, Kevin, does this eclipse sort of give you the effect that a full moon does, where people go a little bit weird?
I don't know. Well, they go around wearing these things. There's people wearing welders masks around here. No, I think that everything's perfectly sane right here.
Now this eclipse is called an annular eclipse.
Annular. Annular from the Greek word ring.
Yeah, so the ring of fire, right? Is what it's called
I don't know. It's a ring.
Sorry, Dad, I'll sing it.
Ring.
Now, these are pretty rare. Nobody else in Canada is really seeing this unless they're watching us or a news channel.
They're actually, you can get a good view in Windsor right now, as you were mentioning. The full effect is in Windsor right now. Sarnia is seeing it. Partial eclipses in Sudbury and Northern Ontario. Halifax is going to see it at 1:16 Atlantic time. So there's quite a few places across Canada that are seeing this.
You wouldn't happen to have an astrologer around you?
Yes.
Really?
Hold
You're
on.
kidding.
I got an astrologer. Where's Dr. Tom
fantastic.
Clark? Actually, Dr. Tom Clark is the head of the planetarium.
Fantastic.
Astrology? No, I don't have an astrologer. I have an astronomer. You know anything about what sign are you? What sign? What's your sign? 401.
Oh, what a gas.
He's a
What a
comedian,
card,
too.
eh? What a card. Just what we need.
Can we see this, Peter? This is actually what Dr. Clark is seeing through his telescope right now. And we're about 7 minutes away from the full effect before we see that ring of fire around the shadow of the moon.
Now listen, if you don't have those glasses on, Kevin, and you just happen to take a quick look, a quick peek, can anything happen to you or what?
Well, it actually can, and you might not even know this right away, but it can burn the back of your eye, the retina. And it's the infrared light that comes down that is bombarding you. You might not even feel the effects of it. So as the moon goes over the sun, everyone here getting kind of excited.
Yeah, exactly.
We get excited over everything in Toronto.
Okay, another question for you, Kevin. How long will it actually be quite dark out?
Well, it won't actually be really, really dark. It's
No?
actually going to get like early evening. It's going to be like early evening in Toronto. So around what it would be like around 8 o'clock tonight. And that'll last for about 3 minutes. In Halifax, if you're watching, it'll last for about 6 minutes. Same thing in Windsor. It'll last for about 6 minutes. In fact, Windsor is still in the middle of theirs right now.
You know what? I really want to find out. I wish there was an astrologer out there. Kevin, how long will it actually be quite dark out?
Well, it won't actually be really, really dark. It's
No?
actually going to get like early evening. It's going to be like early evening in Toronto. So around what it would be like around 8 o'clock tonight. And that'll last for about 3 minutes. In Halifax, if you're watching, it'll last for about 6 minutes. Same thing in Windsor. It'll last for about 6 minutes. In fact, Windsor is still in the middle of theirs right now.
You know what? I really want to find out. I wish there was an astrologer out there who could tell us exactly what this means in terms of, each sign and so on.
Do we have an astrologer? I'm just going to ask Paul on the truck. Do we have an astrologer? He's sending, who are you sending over, Paul? I'm talking to Paul on the truck.
All right.
Moira. Moira is coming over. Moira is an astrologer.
Oh, fantastic. Good.
She's an astrologer and a psychic.
All right. Myra.
She's fighting her way through the crowd,
Okay,
making her way in. So we'll tell you when she gets here.
Okay, sure. We're going
What do you want to know?
Well, actually, how it affects all the zodiac signs. Actually, that'll be really fun. We'll come back to you, Kevin.
Okay.
We're going to just see a video and see you in a bit. Put your glasses on now. Get ready.
Put your glasses on, Beth.
Okay, see you in a bit. Right now, we've got Colin James on Much, and we're going to return over to Kevin Frankish over at the planetarium. Welcome back, Canada. We're going back to Kevin Frankish, who is our eclipse expert. He's at the McLaughlin Planetarium right here in Toronto. And you can only see this eclipse actually in Ontario. Kevin!
Hello, I'm feeling rather annular right now.
All right.
We have achieved what's called annularity. If you can get a shot of this right now,
Great.
We are seeing right now live the full annular eclipse here in Toronto, where the moon has now gone right into the middle of the sun, or covering the middle of the sun, and the ring of fire you see around it is the annularity, the ring of fire around the moon.
Amazing.
I found that astrologer, by the way.
Oh, good, you did.
Yeah.
So her name is Moira
This
Scott?
is Moira. This is Moira. Say hi to Ziggy, Moira.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Ziggy. How's it going?
Hi, good. How's it going with you?
Sorry, I can hear you.
How's it going?
How's it going?
How's it going, Ziggy?
Good. I'm wondering how it's going with you.
How are things going with you?
Pretty well. I'm finding that the eclipse today is offering some very interesting human reactions. If you have a cat or an animal at home, you'll notice that your animals are going to be having a pretty good time. We notice that the birds around this area are also acting kind of strange. So it's quite the day for a lot of people, I think.
So actually, Moira, it has the same effect as a full moon would have.
It's okay, I speak Ziggy. She says it has the same effect of full moon here.
Yes, basically, but this time, because it's so quick, the eclipse is so quick, what we're getting is a lot of sort of flashing with a lot of people's attitudes. People are starting to feel kind of strange, but a lot of people are really enjoying it. You'll notice that people are quite excited about the eclipse, and I think it's great.
Anybody here feeling really strange all of a sudden? Anybody really feeling weird? No?
Hey,
No?
Kevin, I can't tell whether it's the eclipse or the coffee that I had
Or
this
lunch
morning.
hour, I don't know.
Listen, Kevin, ask Moira just how this affects all the astrological signs this
All
year.
right. How does this affect the astrological signs? Is there any effect on the signs?
Basically, it affects them in the way that because it's a new moon tonight, you may not want to start anything brand new. Most people start things in the new moon. Today, you may want to hold off a bit and just sort of wait for a little while. Astrologically, I'm seeing this time as being a fairly good time for a lot of progress. So if you guys are hoping to start something new, hold off a bit, maybe wait till tomorrow. Astrologically, things people will feel a bit of a jump if they're very in tune with their sign, but other than that, it's okay. It's okay. This one has been a very smooth eclipse. Not a lot of weather problems.
Thank you very much, Moira.
She says, thank you very much,
Okay,
Moira.
all the
Thank
best.
you, Ziggy.
All right.
Okay, what else is this scoop? Everybody's got their glasses on now? or
Everybody's
what?
got their glasses on. They're looking at it's actually behind a cloud right now. I know that in Kitchener and Hamilton, they have passed the annularity point. Here in Toronto, the annularity point, we're still in the midst of it right now, that just about to come out. What else have we got? Kingston at 1:30 will be the annular time, and then 2:56 p.m., that's Atlantic time out in Halifax. They'll get a great view for about 6 minutes.
Also, Kevin, just wanted to ask whether, some of the people who've been at work today and have been missing all this stuff, can they catch you tonight on City Pulse News?
No, actually, for people in Toronto, David Onley, our science and technology specialist, he's not an eclipse specialist.
Oh, well, there you go.
He'll have a story on City
There
Pulse
you
today.
go. We've got the guy, right? Listen, thanks a lot, Kevin.
All right. See you,
Take
Ziggy.
care, okay? Thanks for helping us out today.
No problem.
We've got a video for you right now. Stay tuned. Tommy Cromwell's coming up. Right now, we've got the police.
Oh, I think that's enough. So I told you wouldn't believe it if I told you about it. But we actually had a real astronomy show going on at the same time. So anyway, I'm not going to ask if there's any questions or anything. Anyway, it's a little something different. Anything? Next meeting. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, and it's Mars related. Our guest is Kim Tate, who is the curator at the Royal Ontario Museum for the Meteorite and Mars Meteorite and collection. But also she's involved with planning for the Mars sample return, which is part of the Perseverance mission going on right now. And over the next 11 years or so, samples will be collected and other spacecraft will be sent to land on Mars and pick them up and bring them back. So there you go. With that, any comments before we close off tonight? Hope no one has any nightmares after that video.
It's just so wonderful, so refreshing to see Ziggy and much music. I lived through it, so I didn't admit it, but yeah, familiar with it.
Unfortunately, a lot of us lived through the 90s music.
It's such a fun element to today's presentation. Thank you.
Glad you enjoyed that. Okay, so with that, look for emails regarding the new groups, and we will see you soon. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. And if you want to show your friends Ziggy the knowledge of, I hope we don't get in trouble for showing much music on our video. Anyway, we will post the video so you can watch this over and over and over. I'm sure you'll want to. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you, Randy.
Bye.
Thanks, Randy.